So the other day I was spending a bit of time with another photographer doing some edits inside of Photoshop, and the whole concept of smart objects came up for discussion. And this person confessed to me that they didn't know what a smart object was or what they were used for, which I thought was a little bit surprising because he's been using Photoshop for a really long time. Anyway, we spent a little bit of time, just 5-10 minutes. I showed him how to create one and how to use them, and he was just over the moon and couldn't believe that he had spent so much time, so many years using Photoshop, but had never used a smart object. And that got me thinking a little bit about other people that may not be familiar with smart objects. And really, if you're not using them, you're missing out on a key feature of Photoshop, and you really should know about them. So in this video, what I'm going to do is first of all, I'm going to explain what a smart object is. Then I'm going to show you how you can create one. And then I'm going to show you how you can use them. It's really simple stuff, guys. And I've got a couple of samples, the very beginner level examples that we're going to use. But it will give you the foundation for you to then go out and use them in a more advanced manner. Okay, so we're going to jump onto the computer, but before we do, if I could just ask you that if you're enjoying this or you learned something from this video, it would be great if you could give this video a like and maybe consider subscribing to the channel. That is one way that you could support me. Anyway, let's jump onto the computer and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so here we are inside of Lightroom, and I've got a few images here that I'm going to use for my examples. We're going to use this image here first. I'm going to right mouse click on this. I'm in Lightroom, I'm in the develop module. I'm going to go to edit in and then pick Adobe Photoshop. I'm just going to edit the original. And so this comes to my first point. I'm going to show you two different examples of how you can use smart objects. And the first one is going to be around quality. Now, we always talk about when we're doing work in Photoshop, how we should be working in a non-destructive way. And what that means is that, as you can see here, I've opened up the image and I've got one layer open. And then if I was to say, pick the brush tool, I'll make something a little bit smaller, and I've got some black ink and I paint over the top of this, then what I'm doing is I'm working in a destructive manner here. I'm actually painting on top of this one layer, which is where the image exists. So once I do that, this is baked onto the image itself. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to do it differently. We talk about working in a non-destructive manner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer over the top of that one, and then I'm going to paint on that one. Okay, and now I'm working in a non-destructive way, because if I disable this layer, I'm not painting on the layer where the image is at. I'm painting on the layer above that. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about when I say work in a non-destructive way. So let's get rid of this layer now, and we go back to our original one. And I'm going to make a duplicate of this one layer by doing a Command J or Control J if you're on a PC. And then let's move these side by side. Okay, so what I have now is two layers, absolutely identical. Okay, you can see here one's just a copy of another. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to turn the first one, which is the one on the left, okay? We're going to turn that into a smart object, and we do that by right mouse clicking on the layer name, okay, not on the tile, but on the layer name, and then we're going to go to convert to smart object. Okay, so we're going to do that. You can also do it through the filters menu up at the top by going to filter and then convert for smart object. This one is grayed out because I've already done it. So the image on the left, this one here, this is now a smart object, and the image on the right is not a smart object. Now, let's do this. We are going to transform both of these images. That is, we're going to resize them. Okay. First of all, let's do the one on the left. I'm going to do a Command T or Control T to bring up my transform box function. And then I'm going to just make this really, really small. Let's just do that. I'm going to click the tick up at the box or click OK. Then I'm going to go to the second layer. I'm going to do the same thing, Command T or Control T, and I'm going to bring this one, and I'm going to make it to about the same size. I think that's about the same, maybe a little bit bigger, but that's about right. I'm going to click OK or to tick the box up at the top or hit Enter. And then I've got these two new resized images. Now, let's say that I've changed my mind now. I've decided that I don't want them small, I want them big again. So let's go back to my smart object. So we're going to click on that one, and then I'm going to do a Command T again to bring up the transform function again, and I'm going to resize this back up again. Okay, and then I'm going to click the tick, and everything looks fine. Now I'm going to do this on the layer that is not a smart object. So again, Command T or Control T, and I'm going to bring this up again. Whoops, that across there. And then I'm going to click the tick box again. And you'll notice that we've lost a lot of quality now on the image on the right-hand side. This is the non-smart object, okay? And so what's happening here? Well, initially we had, let me undo both of these things. So we're back at the original stage. What's happened is that when we resize the image on the right, which is not a smart object, so let's do that again. When we resize it, Photoshop looks at this, I'll click OK there. Photoshop looks at this image, and now it says, well, it's a much smaller photo. I don't need as many pixels to draw this smaller version of the microphone, and so I'm going to discard any extra pixels because this is a lower resolution image now. It's a much smaller one. I don't need as many pixels. So I'll just get rid of them. And it does exactly that, but it actually deletes them and it gets rid of them for good. So when I go and transform this again into a full size, those pixels are not there. And so you can see that it's already pixelated. And when I click the tick box, you can see it's trying to sort of smooth it out a little bit, but you can easily see that there's information missing, there's pixels missing, okay? And you've now got a lower resolution version of the original image. But that doesn't happen to a smart object. When you apply any changes that you apply or any filters that you apply to a smart object, it always retains the original image behind that. So it's like layers on top of layers, if you like, so like a sub-layer category, okay? So anything you do to a smart object is not done to the actual drawing or the photograph itself. It's a virtual layer that applies over the top of the image, if you know what I mean. Okay, so you can always, what you need to remember is this: you can always return to the original image. Okay, so that is the first thing. You're going to be able to retain quality when you use this method. Okay, so that's the first example that I wanted to show you. Let's have a look at a second example. We'll go back to Lightroom and we're going to pick a different image. Let's pick this one here, and we're going to go into Edit, and again we're going to go into Photoshop. So that will open up, and again I've got my one layer over here. Okay, and let me show you again. We talked about how we work non-destructively by putting layers over the top of the layer that we're working on. So in this case, we would do that and create a new layer, and then we could make our whatever changes we do above this. But sometimes you need to work on the actual layer itself where the image is at. Okay, let me show you an example. So if I'm on this layer here and I wanted to apply a filter, let's say a blur, for whatever reason I wanted to make this whole image blurry. So let's put a Gaussian blur. I'm going to crank this right up so that you can see this in the video. I want to make this super obvious. Okay, so I apply my blur and then I click OK, and that is now baked into the image. So I have a problem here. I've got a problem with control. Okay, I'm not able to go back and alter what I've just done. I can Control Z or Command Z and I can undo it, but that's really they're the limitations of where I can work. I can either leave it as it is, or I can do a Command Z and I can just undo it. Okay, so it doesn't give you a lot of control. And if you apply an effect at this stage and you continue working on this image for a couple of days or even a couple of hours, then you're going to run out of Control Zs that you can do. There's only a limited number that you can do. And it's really just not a smart way of working. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert this into a smart object. So again, we're going to right click on the name of the layer, and we're going to go to Convert to Smart Object. And once we do that, we know that it's converted, by the way, because in the little tile here on the layer, you will see a little icon on the bottom right-hand corner. That means that this layer is now a smart object. So let's go and apply another filter. Actually, we'll do exactly the same filter. We'll go back to blur. Okay, we're going to do the Gaussian blur. We're going to do the same value, everything the same. But we're going to click OK. Now, before I click OK, I want you to keep an eye out what's happening on the layer over here once I click OK. So here we go. We're going to click OK. And you'll notice that you've got all this extra information and extra functions in there. Okay, let me explain to you what these are. Okay, so the first one is called Smart Filters. This is where you can turn the filter that you just applied on or off. Okay, so again, if you have extra layers built up on this and you've been working on this for 2 days, you can come back and disable this, which you might have done this 2 days ago, but you can go back and change it and just turn it on and off at any time. But more importantly, this is what it does. If you right mouse click on the filter name, in this case Gaussian blur, watch what happens. I double click on that, the dialog box comes back. I can now alter the value. I can make it less blurry. Okay, I click OK, and it saves that new value. Okay, I've also got the little eyeball in there, so I can just specifically turn that one on and off. Okay, let me show you something else. Let's go back in there again. Let's make it super blurry again. I want to make this super obvious. I know sometimes you can't see it in the on the video. So I'm going to crank this right up. Okay, it's a ridiculous level, but let's just go with that. And now you'll notice that under Smart Filters, you've got this white box here. Okay, so this is a mask. So I can now click on this mask. Okay, by clicking on the white box here, you'll notice that I've got my black and white values here on the left-hand side for my brush. I'm going to hit my brush, okay? And as you guys know, white shows and black hides, okay? So at the moment, the effect of the Gaussian blur is being shown on the whole picture. That's what this little rectangular shape here, the little rectangle, indicates. It indicates that the whole, this is just a miniature version of this screen. It says that for the whole screen, the blur effect is showing. But if I was to paint black on this layer, again, you need to click on this little white box here. If I was to click paint black on a specific area, I can just turn the effect off there, okay? Just in that section. All right, so this is brilliant, okay? Masks inside of Smart Objects for filters is brilliant, as you can see, okay? And so then I can just do that, okay? Now that still looks ridiculous. So let me go back into the Gaussian blur, double click on that, and I can just crank it down just a little bit so that I can sort of make it fit in with what I want to do. This is a silly example. Of course, you would never do it this way, right? But you can see here, okay, that it's only applied the blur to the sections that are white inside of this mask here. You can see this black spot. That's where I've painted in the house in this case. Okay, let's go and do something again. Let's do something extra. Let's go back into filter. Let's do a camera raw filter. Okay, let's say that this image here looks a little bit too blue. Let's just turn it a little bit warmer. So let's go in warm there, okay? And then we're going to click OK. And this is going to apply to the image. And as you can see, it's added the camera raw filter, the second filter onto the image as well. But it hasn't applied it over the section that we painted black, okay? So I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to say, you know what? I want that area to also have the blur and to have the warmer tone. So I'm going to paint in here, and I'm going to paint with white now because I want it to apply. Okay, so you can see the black areas here in the mask. It's showing you where that effect is not applying. So we're going to go back in paint, and we're going to paint it in white. We can either select the white through here, or we can hit the letter X. The letter X toggles, as you can see from here. It toggles from black to white. So let's paint that in there. And now we're painting that, and it's applied to that. Okay. So there we go. And if we go back to the layer, we see that we now have two effects, and we can turn them both off at the same time by clicking on the overall Smart Filters eyeball, or we can just turn off specific ones, like say just the blur. Okay, if I turn that, it goes sharp again. If I put it back on, it goes blurry. Or I can just do the camera raw filter, which is the warming up of the photograph. I can turn that on, and I can turn that off. So if you continue working on this, and 2 days from now, you decide that you don't want this warm effect, that you want it to go back to cool again, you could go back, even 2 days from now, you could go back to this layer and double click on the raw filter, and it will come up with the changes that you made, and you can turn it back down to blue again if you wanted to. Click OK, and that's going to apply no matter how many other layers you've got above it. So this is the power behind smart objects. It really does give you a lot more control than we had before, and you are working in a less destructive way, as I just showed you. So I'm hoping that you get excited by this and that you start using this, and also that it's giving you the foundations to go out and try to experiment and see how you can use smart objects in your edits. So I hope you were able to follow along, but if something isn't clear, please make sure that you leave them in the comment section below, because I really want you guys to understand this. Otherwise, you can't reach me through any of the usual social media platforms, and you're going to find all the links in the description below. Again, please don't forget to like the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.